Hey guys, tonight we set out on a slow, aching, and slightly ridiculous journey across medieval Europe, with nothing but a blister-prone body, an overstuffed pack, and the unwavering belief that walking hundreds of miles will somehow bring you closer to salvation. You stand at the edge of your village, the faint blue light of dawn barely lifting the haze from the fields. Your cloak, rough wool dyed in streaky browns, itches madly around your neck. You've been told it will break in after a few weeks. You try to believe that. The wicker backpack creaks slightly as you shift your shoulders, already sore, and you've only taken 6 steps. The road ahead is less a road than a suggestion. A narrow rut between hedges, moist from the morning dew and riddled with wheel grooves that threaten your ankles. You shuffle forward, one hand gripping your wooden staff, the other occasionally adjusting the satchel at your side, a bag packed with more anxiety than strategy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it over there? Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first few steps are filled with ambition. After all, you're not just hiking for fun. You're a pilgrim now, officially. You were blessed at the village church, sent off with holy water and one crusty blessing from the parish priest. You're going to Santiago de Compostela. Or maybe Rome. Depends on how your knees hold up. The path is long, uncertain, and almost certainly painful. Let's talk about your gear, specifically that cloak. It's not elegant. It's not flattering. It smells like sheep and despair. But it's warm, and warmth is non-negotiable when you sleep outdoors in April with little more than a soggy mat and God's mercy. The wool is so thick it could repel a mild sword strike, which, honestly, might come in handy. Beneath it, you wear a tunic, undyed linen, belted at the waist with a strip of leather you've had since you were 12. It's stiff and cracked, much like your enthusiasm. Your hose are uneven, one knitted by your aunt, the other found in a chest you weren't technically supposed to open. Together, they mostly cover your legs. Footwear? Ah, the boots. Your uncle swore they were pilgrim-worthy. You're pretty sure they were originally made for a donkey. The leather is stiff, the soles are flat, and already, a blister is forming on your left heel. You try to ignore it. You're going to be doing that a lot. Slung across your back is your most precious possession, your wicker frame pack. It's handmade, slightly crooked, and packed to the brim with everything you think you'll need. Blanket? Check. Dried apples? Check. 3-day-old cheese that smells like sin? Check. Inside, there's also a rolled wax-sealed document from your local abbey, identifying you as a legitimate pilgrim. This is important. Without it, you could be mistaken for a wandering vagrant, or even a spy. Pilgrim badges, pinned proudly to your shoulder strap, rattle as you walk. One depicts St. James. Another, a scalloped shell, is the medieval version of, "I'm on a journey, please don't rob me." Speaking of robbing, you carry nothing truly valuable. That's the point. Pilgrimage is about poverty, penance, and prolonged chafing. Your belt pouch holds a few copper coins, mostly for alms or bribes, and a pewter spoon. You're told you'll need to provide your own eating utensil at inns. It's either that or slurp like a peasant. The air is cool, laced with wood smoke from distant hearths and the soft stink of dung. You pass through your first field, nodding to a plowman who looks vaguely amused. He's seen this before. Pilgrims puffing out their chests on day 1. Give it 2 days, he probably thinks. You'll be limping by then. As you cross into the woods, the light dimming under early leaf canopy, you remember the advice your cousin gave you. Never take the first stick you find for a staff. You ignored him, of course. Now you're stuck with a slightly curved pole that whips you in the leg every few paces. You pause briefly to adjust your load, the straps digging into your shoulders. This is when you realize you packed way too much. Everyone does. It's a rookie mistake. Historians still argue whether pilgrims were ever actually smart about packing, or if half the purpose was to purge materialism by carrying useless junk for 500 kilometers. As you continue down the track, your feet sloshing through dew-wet grass, you hear distant bells, perhaps a monastery, perhaps just a herd. In either case, it's a reminder that civilization is patchy out here. Inns are rare. Shelter is whatever you can find before nightfall. You tighten your cloak and keep walking. By mid-morning, your back hurts. So do your knees. Your stomach makes a sound like an angry badger. You dig out a crust of bread, so hard it could be weaponized. It tastes like dust and determination. You wash it down with a sip from your leather flask, water that was fresh yesterday. Now it's more forest-flavored. You pass a milestone, literally, a stone with a crude carving that says something like, "To Rome, 647 miles. Encouraging. Very encouraging. You briefly consider turning back. But that would mean facing your cousin, who dared you to do this in the first place. You press on. At midday, the sun peeks through the clouds, revealing a smattering of other pilgrims on the path. Some look holier than you. Others look like they just escaped a bar fight. You nod in polite camaraderie, the international language of, "This was a mistake, wasn't it?" By now, your cloak is less itchy and more soggy. It rained a little, just enough to soak in but not enough to cool you off. The mixture of sweat and damp wool is pungent. You adjust your hood and keep walking, each step now accompanied by the melodic squelch of moisture. You think about how many people have done this before you. Centuries of trudging, blisters, bad bread, and holy hope. Pilgrimage wasn't just religious, it was social, economic, even political. Some nobles did it to earn favor with the church. Some peasants did it to escape debts. Others, like you, maybe just needed to leave town for a while. As the sun begins to dip, you start looking for a place to rest. A thatch-roofed wayside shrine appears ahead, offering minimal shelter. You're grateful anyway. You slip off your pack, peel off one boot, and reveal a blister the size of a walnut. It throbs menacingly. You lean back against the shrine wall, your body humming with exhaustion, your clothes slightly steaming from damp. Tomorrow will be harder. But tonight you sleep like someone who absolutely cannot afford to get robbed. You close your eyes, already dreaming of a lighter pack, better boots, and maybe, just maybe, a second sock that matches. You wake up stiff. Not noble pilgrim stiff. More like, I slept on an ant-covered log while wearing damp wool. Stiff. Your left arm is numb from cradling your satchel all night, and your right ankle seems to have made some kind of deal with the devil, judging by the shooting pain. You sit up slowly, bits of straw clinging to your tunic, and realize with dread, your blister has multiplied. The birds are singing. You want to punch a bird. Still, there's no time to wallow. You dust off your cloak, which smells slightly worse today, and dig into your food pouch. Dried apples. Again. The edges have begun to go soft, and you suspect the brown speckles aren't just oxidization. You nibble anyway, eyes scanning the horizon. Another long day of walking lies ahead, and you have to make good time if you want to reach the next town before nightfall. Your feet are already protesting as you lace your boots. Each step is an act of defiance against your body's growing rebellion. As you start walking, you think about your pack. Specifically, all the things in it that are absolutely, 100% unnecessary. Why did you bring 2 combs? Who are you trying to impress? The road isn't exactly crawling with nobles. And then there's the issue of your shoes. They're leather, sure, but thin, medieval walking technology at its most optimistic. No arch support, no cushioning, just a flat slab of hide between you and the stones. You tried stuffing moss inside for comfort. It only made your feet smell like a pond. By mile 3, you've developed a limp, which earns you sympathetic nods from 2 passing pilgrims and a smug grin from a donkey. You curse the donkey under your breath. It's carrying a rider, a small man with a tiny harp and a huge hat. He waves as he passes. You do not wave back. Blisters, you quickly learn, are not a minor inconvenience on pilgrimage. They're a lifestyle. A companion. A conversation starter. "Where's yours?" becomes a common greeting. You meet one woman from Rouen who has so many she's named them. One is called Henri. Henri is angry. Despite the pain, you soldier on. You're proud. Foolishly proud. After all, you're a pilgrim. A temporary martyr of the feet. You think about St. Thomas, who supposedly walked barefoot for miles as penance. Historians still argue whether that's true or just a poetic flourish added by someone with a sandal fetish. You stop at a stream around midday. Your legs are shaking, your throat dry. You sip cautiously from the cool water, pretending not to notice the frog lounging nearby. You glance down at your legs, mud-spattered, scratched, and reddened where the hose chafes. You swore you packed a bit of lard to ease the rub, but after digging through your pouch, all you find is a rock, a candle stub, and one very squashed fig. The candle stub, you remind yourself, is for praying at shrines, or bribing innkeepers, or lighting fires if you're desperate. Versatility is key when everything you own fits in a bag the size of a cabbage. Your food stores are dwindling. You eye a tree full of small, sour-looking crab apples and weigh the risk of explosive stomach regret. Instead, you chew on the last crust of hard cheese. It flakes in your hand like dried mortar. You try to wash it down with water, only to realize you've already drunk most of your ration for the day. At this point, you understand why some pilgrims pack an emergency flask of wine. Not for pleasure, just hydration with a kick. Wine doesn't spoil as quickly as water, and besides, mildly buzzed walking is one way to ignore ankle pain. On the subject of packing, the biggest item you regret is the heavy relic your cousin insisted you bring. It's a pewter cast of a saint's femur, or so he claims. More likely it's just a chunk of firewood with Latin scribbled on it. You wrapped it in cloth and tied it with reverence, but now it clunks against your back with every step, reminding you that some family advice should come with return policies. You also packed a short length of rope, a tiny folding knife, a slingshot, you never know, and a sealed letter from your village priest that you're under strict orders to deliver to an abbey. Somewhere along the way. You haven't actually checked where that abbey is. It could be in the wrong direction. But admitting that would mean admitting a planning failure, and that's not something you're emotionally prepared to do. By mid-afternoon, the sun is high and unrelenting. You fashion a crude shade by draping your cloak over your head, instantly realizing why medieval pilgrims often looked like sweaty ghosts. The wool traps heat but blocks light. You're a walking sauna now. A penitent onion. You spot a shaded hollow beside the road, where a handful of pilgrims rest. You collapse beside them with a groan that draws polite chuckles. A bald man with a scarred forehead offers you a strip of dried eel. You take it, chew slowly, and wonder if you've accidentally eaten a belt. The flavor is committed. Conversation turns, as it always does, to feet. One man shows off a poultice made of moss and crushed garlic. Another claims that vinegar and goose fat is the secret. One old woman nods sagely and says, "I rub mine with onion every night. Keeps away devils." She doesn't elaborate. A younger pilgrim brags about his boots, custom made, padded with sheep's wool and stitched by monks. He still has blisters. This comforts you immensely. As you rest, someone begins singing a slow, mournful hymn. You recognize the tune. It's one they sing during funerals back home. You try not to read too much into it. After all, medieval travel had a bit of a death rate. Not huge, but enough to make you think twice about every creaky bridge and shady stranger. By late afternoon, you begin walking again, limbs groaning in protest. You start to develop the strange rhythm of the long-distance traveler. Step, wince, sigh, repeat. Your pack has settled awkwardly, and now your left shoulder is lower than your right. You try to adjust it. It only makes things worse. The road stretches ahead, dusty and sun-dappled. You pass a group of barefoot children who giggle and point at your grimace. You wave weakly. One tosses you a withered pear. It hits your head. You eat it anyway. Finally, just before sunset, you reach a crossroads marked by a tall, carved stone and an abandoned cart. You drop your pack, sit on the wheel, and let your whole body slump into a puddle of fatigue. A fellow pilgrim offers you a sip from his flask. You take it. It burns. You thank him anyway. The sky blushes with the soft pink of evening. You unfurl your blanket, tuck your pack under your head, and stretch out beneath the stars. Despite the pain, despite the blisters, despite the sheer absurdity of walking this far with cheese crumbs in your hair, you feel something close to peace. You've survived day 2. Barely. You don't wake up so much as gradually rejoin the realm of the living. It's still dark, and your back is molded perfectly to the uneven will you fell asleep against. Somewhere nearby, someone is loudly snoring. It sounds like a small cow being smothered under a wool blanket. You blink up at the stars and briefly wonder if that's a good omen, or just a sign of oxygen deprivation. Your first conscious thought is, you really need to pee. This, unfortunately, leads to your first major challenge of the day, finding a semi-private place to do it without stepping on someone else, falling into a ditch, or accidentally offending a sacred tree. You shuffle behind a bush, clutching your cloak and dignity, and conduct your business while trying not to think about how cold it is. The breeze is very committed this morning. As you return to the camp, there's a new face by the fire, a merchant-looking fellow with sharp eyes and an oversized hat. He's holding a scroll in one hand and what looks like an official seal in the other. Turns out he's not a merchant at all. He's a permit enforcer. That's right. Medieval pilgrimages weren't just walk and pray. You need papers. Specifically, travel permits. Documents with Latin scribbles, red wax seals, and ink so smudged it may as well be interpretive art. Without them, you're technically a vagrant. With them, you're a God-fearing traveler who occasionally smells like wet goats. You fumble in your satchel, elbowing aside a loaf of hardened rye and the mystery relic your cousin gave you. Finally, you produce your wrinkled parchment. The man studies it, raises an eyebrow, and mutters something about barely legible. He stamps it anyway. Either he's feeling generous, or he knows you're no threat. You're currently losing a staring contest with a flea on your knee. The group stirs slowly, limbs cracking, gear repacked with the enthusiasm of hungover squirrels. A nearby nun blesses her flask of water, and someone tries to eat a raw onion for breakfast. You chew on stale bread and try to work the kink out of your neck, wondering how long it'll take before you stop smelling like damp wool and regret. The permit man wanders off, and you begin walking again, feet still tender, the road softer now from recent rain. Puddles dot the path like muddy landmines. Your cloak, stiff from last night's dew, flaps behind you in awkward chunks. You think about the strange system of pilgrim control. Not everyone liked the idea of random peasants crisscrossing kingdoms. Banditry, disease, rumors of political subversion, it made rulers nervous. So, travel passes became a thing. Some were issued by churches, others by town councils. Historians still argue whether these were mainly about safety, or just a sneaky way to tax devotion. And of course, the church had its own reasons. More pilgrims meant more donations, more blessings, more clout. The papal powers weren't above paperwork when it suited them. Some pilgrims even carried indulgence certificates, proof of penance in case they died before completing the walk. A spiritual receipt, essentially. As the sun climbs, you trudge past a fork in the road where a wooden signpost leans dramatically to the left. You squint at the faded script. It could say, "To Canterbury." It could say, "Beware of weasels." Hard to say. You decide to follow the herd and hope someone else can read. A fellow pilgrim sidles up beside you, a short woman with a walking stick taller than she is. She introduces herself as Marta and claims to have walked all the way from Cologne. She points out that you're limping. You pretend not to hear her. Marta is full of advice. She recommends bathing your feet in vinegar and ash. She also recommends carrying 2 sets of papers in case one gets accidentally washed away or stolen. You ask if that's ever happened to her. She looks away. Around midday, the group stops near a crumbling stone chapel, abandoned but still revered. You take shelter inside, the cool air and musty scent oddly comforting. Scratched into the wall is a faint inscription, In Nomine Dei, 1127. Someone's mark. A fellow traveler from centuries ago. You pull out your satchel to double-check your own papers. The scroll is creased and damp at the edges. The ink is fading, but the seal still holds. You decide to wrap it in your extra pair of hose for protection. The hose are mostly whole now, so it's not a huge sacrifice. You eat lunch by the ruined altar, dried lentils and a chunk of salted pork that smells like ambition. You break off a piece, chew thoughtfully, and watch two novice monks debate the best route through the mountains. One swears by the southern pass. The other insists that's where the wolves are. You choose not to weigh in. Back on the road, the group spreads out. Pilgrimage isn't a single-file affair. It's more like an accidental parade. Some march ahead briskly, confident in their path. Others lag behind, hobbling or stopping to pray or inspect rocks. You find yourself somewhere in the middle, drifting from one conversation to another. You learn that a man in the group is traveling to fulfill a vow he made during a plague. He lost his wife and son. Now, he carries their names carved into a wooden tablet strapped to his chest. He doesn't talk much. You don't press. Another man claims he once met a hermit who healed blisters with bee stings. You ask if it worked. He shrugs. I couldn't feel anything for 3 days, so maybe. Late in the day, you reach a toll bridge. A rickety affair, barely wide enough for a cart. A man stands at the entrance, holding a stick and wearing a wide-brimmed hat that suggests either authority or fashion disaster. He demands a coin. Just one. Pilgrim rate, he says with a wink. You dig into your pouch, fingers brushing against that suspicious splinter of the true cross you bought last week. You trade it for a bath right now, but instead, you fork over a coin and keep walking. By dusk, the path descends into a shallow valley lined with elm trees. The branches stretch above like fingers clasping in prayer. You find a patch of dry ground and settle in. Nearby, Marta is tending to her feet with a jar of goose fat. You pretend not to stare. The conversation tonight turns to strange stories. One man insists he saw a glowing deer in the forest last night. Another swears his cousin met a saint disguised as a leper. Everyone laughs gently, not quite mocking. Pilgrimage makes even the ridiculous seem possible. As you lay down, you glance at your documents one last time, tucked safely in your bundle of worn clothes. You've got a long way to go, and plenty more red wax to flash at suspicious bridge trolls. You close your eyes to the sound of crackling fire, quiet prayers, and the soft wheeze of a harmonica someone insisted on bringing. Tomorrow's problem? You still don't know which abbey that letter needs to go to. Morning doesn't so much arrive as descend heavily upon your spine. You roll over with a groan that startles a squirrel and discover that a rock has been spooning you all night. Your cloak is stiff with dew, your boots are colder than should be legal, and your fingers feel like they've been dipped in glue. Still, your nose is working, and unfortunately, so is the cheese you packed 6 days ago. You sit up slowly, adjust your hood, and prepare yourself for the day's most crucial task, rummaging through your pouch without accidentally pulling out the old fish you meant to eat yesterday. Your pilgrim pouch, slung tight against your side, is your lifeline. It holds everything: money, food, paperwork, and the small handful of semi-sacred junk you convinced yourself you need. Let's take inventory. First, the money, a cloth-wrapped bundle of copper coins, worn smooth by the friction of desperation. You count them every morning, not because you're paranoid you are, but because they seem to vanish at an alarming rate. Inns, toll bridges, food stands, shrine donations, it's a drip 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 of medieval currency that leaves you wondering how poor people ever made it to the Holy Land in the first place. Second, food. Or what's left of it. There's a chunk of rye bread that's harder than the stones you're walking on. A sliver of cheese, now dangerously shiny. And tucked lovingly into a side pocket, a boiled egg wrapped in cloth, a luxury item you've been hoarding like treasure. You hold it up dramatically. Do you eat it now? Or save it for when you're actually dying? You put it back. Not today, egg. Not today. Then, the odds and ends. Your pewter spoon, still miraculously unbent. A length of waxed thread, meant for sewing or possibly fishing, though you've used it mostly for tying your boots when the laces failed. A broken comb. A chunk of salt. And, of course, the relic, still wrapped, still unverified, still annoying. You also carry your secret snacks. Everyone does. It's an unspoken rule. While your official rations are meant to be shared or traded, your secret stash is yours and yours alone. For you, it's a pouch of honeyed almonds tucked into the lining of your cloak. You pop one in your mouth now and immediately feel wealthier, wiser, holier. For 15 seconds, you are unstoppable. Pilgrims from different regions carry wildly different things. You've met men from Burgundy who swear by dried pears soaked in vinegar. A Breton nun once gave you a preserved turnip, which you ate, out of gratitude and mild terror. One particularly smug fellow from Aragon carries olives packed in oil, which he claims are lightweight and delicious. He smells like a salad, and you resent him deeply. You tighten your belt, your pouch jangling lightly, and get moving. The road today is slightly more defined, lined with thorny shrubs and the occasional post carved with the scalloped shell symbol. The scalloped shell, you've learned, is the icon of pilgrimage, a badge of holy intent. You have one pinned to your hat, because it's either that or a feather, and you're not trying to look festive. As you walk, you pass shrines. Lots of them. Some are as simple as a wooden cross tied to a tree. Others are elaborate, stone-carved mini-temples covered in moss and bees. You stop briefly at one, Saint Hubert, patron of travelers, and offer a crumb of bread. It's not much, but it's all you have. You whisper a prayer. Something vague but sincere. Mostly about not dying of foot rot. By midday, the sun's heat turns your pouch into a portable oven. Your cheese melts a little, fusing to the cloth. You ignore it. Food is food, and at this point, you've developed the iron stomach of a duck. Lunch is an impromptu affair beside a trickling stream. You and two others, you think one is named Henri, or maybe Henrique, share bread, nuts, and a conversation about what you'd eat if you were home. One man describes a roast lamb with herbs. Another mourns his wife's barley stew. You mention beer, and everyone nods in quiet agony. You sip water from your flask, which is made of goat bladder and optimism. It's warm now, slightly tangy. You pretend it's herbal tea. You pretend a lot of things these days. After lunch, you check your pouch again. Something is definitely missing. You dig through every layer, panic rising. The egg is still there. The spoon, too. But the wax tablets are gone. Ah, yes, the wax tablets. Small, portable slates coated in black wax, used for notes or scribbles or, in your case, a rough map drawn by a man with no teeth and 3 fingers. It wasn't a good map. But it was your map. You sigh, chalking it up to another road casualty. As you walk on, you spot a man ahead digging through his bag while cursing in Latin. You catch snippets. Missing pouch, thieving goat, this is why I travel alone. You exchange a look as you pass, a universal pilgrim expression that roughly translates to this is all ridiculous, isn't it? Later in the afternoon, you pause at a wayside market. Really, it's 2 tables and a donkey. An old woman sells bundles of herbs and strips of dried onion. She eyes your pouch and gestures toward her selection. You shake your head. She smiles knowingly and points at her own secret snack stash, a small cake tucked beneath a cloth. You're impressed. Game recognizes game. You move on, your pouch now heavier with shame and one surprise purchase, a string of dried figs you absolutely did not need but emotionally could not leave behind. You'll regret it tomorrow when your waistband protests, but for now, they taste like glory. The trail turns rocky as evening falls. Every jolt sends your pouch swinging, knocking against your hip in a rhythm that's both annoying and reassuring. You know every item inside now by feel. You could pick out your spoon in total darkness. You could find that last almond blindfolded. Somewhere up ahead, someone sings again, low and wordless. You hum along. Your pouch thuds softly with each step, the quiet percussion of persistence. You think about how something so small can carry so much. Your hopes, your comfort, your mistakes, your survival. The road narrows, flanked by hedgerows. You follow the curve and find a small clearing with a half-crumbled bench. You sit, back aching, and set the pouch in your lap. You run your fingers along the seams, checking for frays, smoothing the folds. You've grown weirdly fond of this thing. It's like a tiny, smelly best friend. You lie down beside it, one arm draped protectively over the leather strap. Your last thought before sleep is that you should probably eat the egg soon. Maybe tomorrow. You wake to the gentle sound of buzzing flies and the less gentle realization that your left hip is numb. The pouch had spent the night wedged directly beneath you, pressing a fig into your side with quiet determination. The egg is, somehow, still intact. A small miracle. Or perhaps it's just too stubborn to break. The morning air smells of damp leaves, wet wool, and something faintly herbal. Marta, the tiny woman with the massive staff, has already been up, and judging by the lingering scent of onion and goose fat, she's treated her feet to another round of medieval spa therapy. You pull on your boots with a hiss, the blister beneath your left heel now whispering threats. Today is ointment day. Not officially, of course, but for you, the ritual begins. You pull out the small tin tucked into the inner flap of your pack, a grayish paste that claims to be made of lard, camphor, and something called Pilgrims moss. You don't know what that is, but it smells like disappointment and eucalyptus. You smear it generously onto your ankle, hoping for divine intervention. You've collected quite the apothecary of weird bombs. There's the stinky green one the toothless apothecary insisted would encourage the blood to behave. There's the minty one that gave you hives but cleared up your nose. And there's a tiny wax-sealed jar you bartered from a wandering friar. It has no label, only a handwritten note that says, "Good for boils, curses, and marriage." You keep that one for emergencies. As you stretch and groan your way onto the road, a fellow pilgrim named Tibwa sidles up beside you. He smells faintly of garlic and confidence. He wears a necklace made of bones, chicken bones, mostly, and carries a bundle of herbs tied in cloth. Tibwa believes deeply in spiritual layering. That's when you combine relics, charms, prayers, and ointments into one holy mishmash of protection. The man's a walking pharmacy and theology thesis. He asks if you've used your ointments yet today. You nod. He grins. Inside the pouch or outside? You blink. Both? He nods approvingly. Tibwa produces a pouch of dried rose petals mixed with lavender and thyme. Keeps lice away, he explains. And smells like a saint's laundry. You take a whiff. He's not wrong. This starts a group-wide discussion about pilgrim health strategies. Marta swears by animal fat on the soles. One man recommends stuffing nettles into your socks. He claims the stinging distracts you from the actual pain. Someone else mutters something about garlic bandages and wolf urine but offers no proof or follow-up. Historians still argue whether these remedies actually worked or were just elaborate placebos meant to give travelers a sense of control. What's certain is that medieval pilgrims were extremely inventive when it came to not dying. You stop briefly at a fountain outside a monastery. A carved lion's head spits cold water into a trough, and you take the opportunity to rinse your face and fill your flask. Beside the fountain is a small table with salves and charms for sale, manned by a novice monk with suspiciously clean hands. You buy a beeswax balm that promises to heal cracked skin and purify your soul. 1 jar. 2 functions. As the sun rises higher, you trudge along a narrow track bordered by ferns. You pass a man sitting in a ditch, poking at a suspicious sore on his arm with a twig. You consider offering him your boils, curses, and marriage jar, but think better of it. There's a fine line between charitable and wildly irresponsible. Around midday, the path leads through a dense pine forest, and the air grows thick with the smell of resin and damp bark. You break for lunch on a fallen log, feet outstretched, and crack open your boiled egg at last. It peels badly. Bits of shell cling to the white like armor. You eat it anyway, seasoning it with the salt you've hoarded like gold. Nearby, someone is treating a rash with a poultice of mashed leeks and clay. Another rubs nettle leaves on their arms, muttering something about circulation. You decide to stick with ointments that don't involve self-flagellation. The deeper into the woods you walk, the itchier you become. Something is crawling up your leg. Possibly 2 somethings. You try to ignore it. You fail. You stop walking and furiously scratch. A beetle tumbles out of your sock like it paid rent. You shake out your hose, your dignity hanging by a thread. You consider applying more balm, but you've already begun to develop what you call ointment fatigue, the weary suspicion that you now smell like a spice rack and still feel awful. By late afternoon, you reach a small hospice. It's run by elderly monks who smell of mint and soap, a novelty in these parts. They offer you a bit of balm made from sheep's wool fat and rosemary. It's thick, yellow, and alarmingly warm. You apply it to your heels and immediately regret everything. But it works. Inside, the hospice walls are covered in painted saints, each with disproportionately large feet, perhaps a sign of solidarity. The monks give you a thin broth that tastes faintly of leek and apology. You thank them profusely, rest your feet, and write in your wax tablet, remind self, rosemary balm equals witchcraft. As you lie down that night in the straw-stuffed cot, the scent of ointments still clings to you. The salves, the herbs, the charms, they're not just medicine. They're a kind of faith. A declaration that you're trying, that you believe, that you hope tomorrow will be slightly less terrible. You drift off thinking about how many people have slept here before you, greased and bandaged and praying through the same aches. You may not know exactly what's in all these bombs, but you know this: they've carried you one more day down the road. By now, you've accepted it. This journey is not about divine clarity. It's about quietly managing discomfort. You wake to the soft gurgle of someone nearby gargling vinegar, and the not-so-soft grunt of someone else trying to pry a boot off a swollen foot. You don't even blink. It's all normal now. Your ankle, at least, is marginally better. You credit the goose-fat mint wrap, though it may have just numbed the pain by overwhelming your senses with smell. Your first real task of the day is strapping your dagger back onto your belt without stabbing yourself in the thigh. It's a clumsy process, involving half a prayer and some creative twisting. Let's talk about that dagger. You weren't technically supposed to bring it. Pilgrims are meant to rely on divine protection, communal kindness, and the threat of mild spiritual curses. But have you seen the road lately? Every pilgrim you've met has something stashed away. A club carved from a tree root. A slingshot. For rabbits, which absolutely isn't. One older woman carries a long pin she insists is for her bun, but you're not fooled. That thing's seen action. You check your pack to make sure it's still in there. A stubby, iron-hilted blade with a chipped edge and the comforting weight of security. You haven't used it, not really. But the mere presence of it makes walking through dense woods or crossing sketchy bridges feel slightly less suicidal. Historians still argue whether pilgrims were allowed to carry weapons or if doing so was considered sinful. Most agree that while the church frowned on violence, it also didn't send guards with you. So people made their own arrangements. You tighten your belt and adjust your cloak, trying to conceal the handle without making it obvious you're trying to conceal the handle. A fellow pilgrim nods at you. He's got a walking stick that's suspiciously thick near the top. You nod back. Mutual understanding, this is a dangerous walk. You're not here to start fights, but you'd like to finish one if it finds you first. The road today leads through a narrow glen flanked by tall grasses and the occasional crumbling watchtower. It's quiet. Too quiet. You stick close to the group. Marta walks beside you, her staff tapping rhythmically on the packed dirt. She's humming again, some tune you think might be a hymn or a drinking psalm. It's hard to tell with medieval melodies. Around midday, you hear the rustle of hooves. Not the gentle clop of a passing cart, but the scattered, too fast sound of someone riding hard. You duck instinctively, hand on your blade. A rider passes, cloak billowing, eyes wild. No emblem. No greeting. Just dust and tension. The group goes silent. You glance around. Everyone looks nervous. That wasn't a courier. That was someone running from something. You move on more cautiously. The trees crowd tighter, and the sun filters down in dappled patches, which would be lovely if you weren't half expecting a bandit to leap out at any moment. This is the stretch of the road where travelers swap horror stories. The man walking behind you says he once met a pilgrim who lost everything to thieves, clothes, coins, even the waxed letter from his bishop. He finished the walk and borrowed hose and a pine cone for a spoon, the man says. You don't ask questions. You don't want to know. Up ahead, a shrine built into a rock wall appears, St. George, slayer of beasts. His carved face is serene, though the dragon at his feet looks more like a large dog with bad posture. Someone's left offerings: a crust of bread, a twist of garlic, a child's tooth. You add a pebble and whisper a vague request for safety, maybe a little less goat theft. You stop to eat lunch: cheese, bread, a fig that's definitely seen better centuries. You perch on a mossy stump and pull out your blade, checking the edge. Still dull. Still dependable. You scrape it gently against a flat stone, pretending you know what you're doing. The edge improves by very little. You rewrap it and slide it back into the sheath tied to your belt, making a mental note to never admit how little you know about actual fighting. You're counting on the blade being more deterrent than necessity. A fellow pilgrim, lanky and twitchy, joins you. He's got a scar on his cheek and a suspiciously clean cloak. He offers you a bit of salted meat in exchange for some of your figure. You trade, reluctantly. His eyes never leave your dagger. You notice this. After he walks away, you tuck the blade deeper into your cloak. The day grows hotter. You pass a crossroads marked by a standing stone etched with a warning: "Beware thieves, repentant or not." You all chuckle nervously. One man makes a joke about the afterlife having different lanes for former criminals who walk to Compostela. You laugh politely, then grip your staff tighter. There's always the chance that someone in your group is not quite a pilgrim, that the robe is borrowed, that the walking stick is more weapon than walking aid. You glance around. There's the woman with the bird skull necklace, the man who won't say where he's from, the merchant with no actual goods. You're all together, but barely trusting. The sun dips low, and you start scouting for shelter. A crumbling barn appears at the edge of a field, abandoned mostly. Inside there's old hay, some broken tools, and a few dry spots. You stake out a corner. Tonight, someone suggests taking turns keeping watch. You volunteer for the second shift, not quite early, not quite late. The perfect middle-of-the-night paranoia slot. You lie down beside your pack, dagger close, cloak pulled tight. Your turn comes sooner than expected. Marta taps your shoulder. You blink, confused, then sit up. The barn is pitch black except for the glow of embers near the door. You sit, watching shadows twitch on the wall. It's quiet. Too quiet again. A creak. A soft footstep. You hold your breath, fingers brushing your dagger's hilt. A rat scurries by. You exhale slowly. Later, someone coughs in their sleep. A dog howls far off. You stare out into the darkness and realize you're not scared, not really. Just aware. You're carrying a weapon not because you want to fight, but because you're not naive. There are things on the road worse than blisters. Eventually, your shift ends. You nudge the next watchman, roll onto your side, and curl up with your pack. Your blade presses against your ribs. It's not comfortable, but it's familiar. You sleep, knowing it's still there. You wake up with a dagger-shaped bruise on your side and the sour taste of someone else's garlic breath hanging in the hay-scented air. The barn is cold. Not romantic cottage cold, more like drafty death trap cold, with occasional bird droppings from above. You stretch, grunt, and peel off your damp cloak, only to realize something horrifying: your psalter is missing. Now, let's be honest. You didn't pack the psalter because you planned to read it nightly by candlelight like a saint. You packed it because your aunt insisted. For spiritual guidance, she'd said, shoving the leather-bound little book into your arms. And in case someone needs convincing you're really a pilgrim. Which, in hindsight, wasn't bad advice. But the thing is, it's heavy. Surprisingly so. Small but dense, like a devotional brick. Bound in dark brown leather, its edges gilded with what you hope is not actual gold, because if it is, someone has definitely pawned it by now. You turn over your pack, sift through your bundled hose and crumbling rations, but no psalter. It's gone. You look around. No one else seems to have anything new sticking out of their bags. The bird skull woman is humming again. Teeb was applying mint paste to a suspicious bite. The snoring man in the corner, who claims to be a friar but swears like a sailor, hasn't moved. You're not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. You pull your blanket tighter, rechecking everything else. Spoon? Check. Charms? Check. Mummified fig, that's either food or future evidence? Still there. Just no Salter. You whisper a few choice words that would definitely get you flagged at confession and move on. The truth is, pilgrims bring all kinds of weird, heavy things. You've met people with entire book satchels, portable crucifixes, hand-inked scrolls. One man in Florence swore he was carrying a finger bone from St. Apollonia in a walnut box lined with wool. You didn't ask follow-up questions. You were afraid the bone might hear. You, however, were smart. You only packed one book. And it was already annoying. The day's walk begins slow. Your feet feel like damp toast. You trudge behind the group, trying not to think about your missing Salter or the fact that your left sock has become a sentient creature with its own opinions. You tug it up again and keep going. Historians still argue whether most pilgrims were literate enough to use the books they carried, or if they just brought them along to look holy. For you, the book was more of a prop. A conversation buffer. Something to clutch dramatically during sudden rain. Your staff thumps rhythmically against the path, and you pass another stone marker. It's faded, but you can just make out the scalloped shell etched into the top. 20 more leagues to the next major waypoint. You groan, then immediately regret it. Your throat is dry as an August confession. Mid-morning, the group pauses at a small monastery. The monks here are tight-lipped, sandal-footed, and smell of beeswax. You kneel at the door, present your travel permit, and ask, very politely, if they've seen a Salter dropped or borrowed. They haven't. They do, however, give you a pamphlet-sized blessing and a cup of weak ale. You're tempted to ask if they've got a spare Salter, but something about the way one monk glares at you suggests he'd rather lend you a beehive. Back on the road, Martin notices your brooding silence and asks what's wrong. My Salter's gone. You mumble. Oh, she says, blinking. You were reading that? You're not sure if you should feel offended or seen. She offers you a tiny scrap of paper covered in hand-copied prayers. It smells faintly of onions and holy oil. You thank her and tuck it into your pouch. It's no leather-bound devotional tome, but it fits better in your bag and doesn't weigh more than your dignity. Later, during lunch, someone opens a satchel and pulls out what appears to be 4 books. You stare. You carry all that? The man, a thin priest with twitchy fingers, shrugs. Spiritual armor. You nod solemnly, then whisper to Marta. I bet he never walks more than 5 miles a day. She snorts and nearly chokes on her bread. As the afternoon heat builds, your thoughts wander back to that missing Salter. You picture it lying in a puddle somewhere, soaked and alone. Or worse, being sold to some noblewoman who uses it as a coaster. You sigh. Was it valuable? Maybe. But mostly it was yours. And now it's not. You press on, passing rolling fields and a low hill where a broken statue of Saint Benedict leans like he's had enough of your whining. You mutter an apology and keep going. Eventually, the road winds into a wooded stretch where everything is dappled and cool. You sit beside a moss-covered rock, sip lukewarm water, and rewrap your swollen ankle with the last of your spare linen. You think about what else you brought. The letter from the priest, still unread. The cracked icon you keep in a cloth. The charm from your cousin, shaped like a snail. Who brings a snail charm? What exactly is that supposed to do? Make you slow and sticky? Even without the Salter, your pack is absurd. You carry more weight than sense. But that's the pilgrim way, right? Pack everything you don't need, regret it, then eventually give it away or forget it under a tree. You hear a rustle behind you. It's the maybe friar. He plunks down and offers you half a figure. You accept it. He pulls out a tiny book from inside his robe. You freeze. Could it be? It's not. It's his Salter. He sees your face and grins. Lose yours? You nod. He flips through his copy and says, they're all the same after a while. Words blend together. Best you can do is walk like you mean it. Then he hands you a page he's torn from the back. It's scribbled with a psalm and a crude drawing of what might be a bear playing a harp. You don't ask. You tuck it away, nod in thanks, and carry on. That night, you settle into a dry patch beneath a spreading tree. You lay out your blanket, adjust your pouch beneath your head, and pull out the torn psalm. You whisper it once, mostly from memory. No psalter. But something better, maybe. A reminder. The words don't weigh half as much as the walk. Your eyes open before dawn, not from any internal clock, but because something, possibly a very rude beetle, crawled into your ear and then out again. You blink, shiver, and let out a sound that lies somewhere between a yawn and a medieval curse. Your body protests even small movements now. Muscles you forgot existed are stiff, joints are whispering threats, and your stomach, oh, your stomach is staging a quiet rebellion. Time for breakfast. You dig into your pouch, which has acquired a curious smell. A blend of cheese, sweat, and faintly rotting figure. Delightful. You root around and emerge with your prize. A pouch of dry lentils and the last wedge of bread that's gone so hard it could be used in construction. You chew slowly, jaw working against the grainy, slightly sour texture. This is not a gourmet experience. But it's food, and food is fuel, and you'll need it for what lies ahead. Today, you'll be walking through farmland, miles of open fields and uneven paths with no shade and even fewer places to refill your flask. A fellow pilgrim sidles up and offers a bite of his own breakfast, salted fish. It's so pungent it makes your eyes water. You thank him anyway. Hospitality is currency on the road. You trade a bit of stale bread for a strip of his fish, and now your breath smells like despair and ocean. As you walk, the topic of food becomes the conversation's centerpiece. Marta, walking with her usual determined wobble, declares that nothing beats roasted chestnuts. Tibua chimes in that he once carried dried goat meat wrapped in basil leaves. It tasted like anger, he says, nodding solemnly. One man claims to have met a pilgrim who subsisted entirely on beer for 2 weeks. No one knows whether to admire or fear him. Historians still argue whether pilgrims genuinely ate this poorly or if accounts were exaggerated to emphasize piety. But you know the truth. This isn't some symbolic fast. This is survival eating. Whatever lasts longest, weighs the least, and won't kill you on day 3 is fair game. Around mid-morning, you pass through a hamlet where a baker's fire has just been lit. The smell, oh, the smell, wafts down the lane like a holy apparition. You slow your pace, nostrils flared, stomach howling. You consider your remaining coins and calculate whether buying a warm roll would break your budget or your spiritual resolve. You buy the roll. Obviously. It's still warm, slightly burned, dusted with coarse salt. It is, without exaggeration, the most divine thing you've tasted in weeks. You nibble it slowly, pretending to share the last bites with Marta, who gives you a look that suggests she's seen through your performance. The group passes a roadside shrine dedicated to St. Lawrence. Pilgrims ahead have left food offerings, mostly dried herbs and broken crusts. You leave a few lentils, which feel both generous and slightly insulting. A child watching from a nearby cottage tosses you a green apple. You thank her with a bow. She grins and runs off. You walk on, apple in hand, lentils rattling in your pouch. You've settled into a rhythm now, 3 steps, limp, adjust satchel, repeat. It's not elegant, but it's dependable. Later in the day, you reach a rest stop, a hollowed-out tree trunk set beside a small stream. Someone has carved instructions into the bark in 4 different languages. Drink upstream of the donkey, it says. Wise advice. You sit, refill your flask, and eat half the apple. It's tart and slightly bruised, but miraculous. You think of the meals you've left behind, warm soups, roasted meats, cakes dusted with honey. You try not to resent your current diet of whatever's not moldy. A younger pilgrim joins you and pulls out a cloth bundle. Inside, mushrooms, berries, and a small loaf wrapped in leaves. You stare. He offers a bite. You take it. It tastes like actual joy. He smiles and tells you his mother packed it for him, and that he's rationed it like treasure. You nod. You would have eaten it all on day 1, You learn quickly that food isn't just sustenance out here. It's morale. A reason to keep going. Something to talk about when your blisters are too painful to joke about. Some pilgrims keep dried fruit tucked into hems or secret pouches sewn into their cloaks. One man hides a sausage in his hat lining. You know this because it fell out during prayer. There's also a spiritual angle to food. Some pilgrims fast on purpose, believing that hunger sharpens the soul. Others eat only what they can scavenge. One older man claims he hasn't eaten meat in 10 years, and that every missed meal brings him closer to heaven. You nod, though you're unsure if he's closer to God or just really hungry. As the sun begins to dip, the group sets up camp near a wheat field. The golden stalks ripple in the wind, soft and hypnotic. You set your pack down and rummage for dinner. You have one fig left. One corner of bread. And that piece of fish you've been pretending you didn't still have. You stare at it. It stares back. You eat it anyway. Dinner is quiet. Everyone chews in slow silence, watching the stars appear. Someone passes around a flask of weak wine, and you all take tiny sips. It tastes like old grapes and warm pewter, but it dulls the ache a little. Someone starts singing a lullaby in a language you don't understand. You hum along. Before sleep, you wrap the rest of your bread in cloth and tuck it under your blanket. Not for security, just to soften the ground. You close your eyes, belly still half empty, and think, tomorrow, you'll trade for dried apricots. Or maybe barter your spoon for another apple. Or maybe, just maybe, the road will surprise you with a warm stew and a kind innkeeper. You can dream. You awaken not to birdsong or sunlight, but to the desperate groan of someone squatting behind a bush. And that, unfortunately, is your reminder. Today is the day your bladder becomes a central character in your story. You sit up, blink blearily, and realize your body is already giving signals that nature is not only calling, it's shouting through a tin can tied to your kidneys. You gather your cloak, your modesty, and your dignity, what little of it remains, and shuffle off behind a dense thicket. This is not the glamorous side of pilgrimage, if such a thing exists. There are no rest stops. No charming outhouses. Just bushes, trees, and the constant awareness that someone might walk by at any moment and witness the medieval equivalent of disaster. You choose your spot carefully, double-checking the angle of the hill, the nearby trail, and the wind direction, yes, that matters now, and begin the clumsy task of managing robes, hose, and cloak while keeping your feet dry. The act itself becomes an Olympic-level balance exercise, especially with stiff muscles and a full pack. You mutter something that's part prayer, part apology to Saint Anthony, and hope the leaves aren't poison ivy. Behind you, someone coughs. You freeze. It's Marta. Bush taken? She asks casually. You grunt. Temporarily. Welcome to the communal bathroom that is the European wilderness. As you rejoin the group, you notice others performing the same discreet dances behind trees, rock piles, and ruined walls. It's a daily reality, one no one talks about, but everyone deeply understands. The shared silence, the sheepish eye contact, the shuffling gait back to the road, all part of the experience. You think about the logistics. How did people do this for months on end? And in cities? And in the middle of packed pilgrim routes? Historians still argue whether designated rest areas ever existed or if everyone just gave up on privacy by mile 50. Some pilgrims carry small linen cloths for hygiene, others rely on leaves, moss, or the occasional charitable innkeeper with a bucket. You've heard rumors of bathhouses in larger towns, but you haven't seen one yet. You're starting to believe they're mythological, like dragons or functional shoes. You pass a cart full of barrels. One has a sign carved into the wood: beer. Strong. Do not drink too fast. Tempting, but you remember what happened to Tibwa 2 days ago. He downed a mug too quickly and had to relieve himself 3 times in a single mile. You still remember the look on his face as he sprinted into the woods, arms flailing like a medieval scarecrow. No, thank you. Your current strategy is strategic hydration. Drink early, sweat it out by noon, and hope you make it to camp before your bladder makes decisions for you. At midday, you stop at a shaded grove for lunch. A few small logs serve as makeshift seats. You unwrap your food, still meager, a heel of bread, a smear of soft cheese, and 2 hazelnuts you've been saving for exactly this level of despair. You eat slowly, chewing until your jaw aches, as if that will trick your stomach into thinking it's full. You sip water sparingly. The flask is lighter than it should be. You consider asking the group if anyone has extra, but that means admitting poor planning, or worse, that you're running low. Instead, you fold your cloak around your legs and wait for the urge to pass. Around you, the topic turns to bodily functions. Not in depth, no one really wants to describe the worst of it, but in solidarity. Blisters, rashes, cramps. Someone mentions a nightmare walk, where they had to go behind a fence and ended up accidentally squatting into a nest of beetles. You wince. That's going to haunt you tonight. Another man, older and more philosophical, shares a tip: walk with your belt loose. Pressure down there causes trouble, he says, tapping his side with knowing authority. It's all about flow. You nod, pretending to understand. You silently loosen your belt. The afternoon heat makes everything worse. Your cloak sticks to your back. The leather strap of your satchel digs into your collarbone. Every sip of water is both relief and future regret. The tree's thin, and now you're on open trail. No cover, no shade, and definitely nowhere to pee. You distract yourself by watching birds. Then by counting stones. Then by thinking about your old chamber pot back home. You hated that thing, until now. Now, it seems like a luxury item. You'd trade half your spoon collection for it. Late in the day, the group stops by a stream, clear, cold, shaded by weeping willows. Everyone pretends it's just for resting, but there's a subtle sprint to the far side where the shrubs grow dense. You follow. You don't even try to pretend anymore. You find a spot, mark your territory like a very polite, regretful bear, and let out a sigh that's halfway between relief and musical lament. Afterward, you sit on the bank, toes in the stream, shoes off. You watch the water and reflect. There's something oddly freeing about this. About letting go, literally and metaphorically. The loss of modesty, the loss of convenience, the realization that this is what it means to be human in motion. Stripped down to function, to hunger, to the simple need to find a bush at the right time. You rinse your hands in the water, shake off your cloak, and rejoin the group. The sun is setting behind the hills, painting the sky in streaks of lavender and orange. A breeze picks up, cool and clean. You breathe it in. For the first time in hours, your body is quiet. No alarms. No pressure. Just movement, rhythm, and the soft sound of pilgrim feet on dust. That night, camp is set beside an old stone well. You draw water, refill your flask, and laugh as someone tells a joke about monks and bladder control. You lie down beside your pack, blanket pulled tight, and fall asleep thinking of the strange comfort of shared discomfort. Because out here, even the awkward parts are part of the pilgrimage. You dream about outhouses, big, clean ones, with scented straw and a door that locks. You wake up mid-snore to the soft gurgle of someone brushing their teeth with a stick, and a goat licking the corner of your cloak. The goat belongs to no one. It has simply attached itself to the group and is now, unofficially, a pilgrim. Someone named it Brother Cabbage. You try not to take that personally. As the group gathers their things, you stretch, groaning softly as each vertebra reminds you it exists. The day ahead is longer than usual. The plan is to reach a small town with real beds, or at least real walls. You're not optimistic, but the thought of sleeping indoors is motivation enough. The sky is gray and thick with clouds. Rain is coming. You can feel it in your joints, and your joints are rarely wrong. The road is muddy from a storm 2 nights ago. Wagon tracks have turned it into a labyrinth of puddles, each deeper than it looks. Your boots are already soaked within 10 minutes. You consider this a warm-up for what's to come. An hour in, the rain starts in earnest. Big, lazy drops at first. Then the kind of steady, committed drizzle that soaks your cloak, your pack, your soul. You pull your hood over your head, adjust your gear, and keep walking. There's no other choice. Everything becomes slippery. Your left foot skids on a mossy stone, and you land in the mud with a sound like a sigh from the earth itself. You sit there for a moment, blinking rain from your lashes, wondering if this is the part where you learn a life lesson. It's not. You just stand up, covered in brown, and keep going. Pilgrims are starting to look less like pious travelers and more like walking laundry heaps. Cloaks hang like wet rugs. Hair is plastered to foreheads. Someone ahead sneezes hard enough to startle a crow. Then comes the itching. At first it's just a spot behind your knee. Then it spreads to your calf, your lower back, the inside of your elbow. You know this feeling. Damp fabric plus friction plus several days of substandard hygiene equals rash city. You duck under a tree, drop your pack, and begin the familiar routine: loosen the belt, peel off the hose just enough, and apply whatever ointment is still usable. You opt for the mystery paste from the old monk's hospice. It smells like burnt mint and regret, but it cools the itch almost immediately. Marta passes by and raises an eyebrow. Rashes? You nod grimly. She tosses you a bundle of dried leaves. Rub those on after. It helps. Probably. You trust her. Mostly. Rain or no rain, the walk continues. You pass by a shrine made entirely of bones, small animal bones, you hope. Someone's lit a candle there, despite the weather. The flame flickers bravely under a makeshift cover of waxed linen. You kneel for a moment, not out of obligation, but because your knees want a break and the shrine offers psychological shelter. You whisper a prayer for dry socks and stand back up. Further ahead, the road splits. One path goes through the woods. The other, over a ridge. The group argues briefly. Marta votes for the woods, more cover. Tibua insists on the ridge. Less mud. Brother Cabbage eats a piece of map that no one was using. You choose the ridge. It's steeper than you expected. Your legs burn, and every few steps your boot slips. But the view, once you reach the top, is something else. Rolling hills under a sky like wet wool. A crooked line of pilgrims climbing slowly behind you. The distant glint of a river, silver and swollen. And just beyond that, the town. You squint. It might be an illusion, or hope hallucination, but you swear you see chimneys, and that means roofs. Encouraged, you begin the descent, which is somehow worse than going up. Your left boot slides, your knee buckles, and you nearly take out Tibua, who's been walking behind you grumbling about goat smells. You catch yourself on a tree root and pretend it was graceful. He doesn't buy it. By the time you reach the valley floor, you're soaked, scratched, and shivering. The rash is back. The ointment is gone. And the town is still a half day away. You pass a stream where someone is trying to wash mud from their cloak. The water is cold, brown, and moving fast. You opt to keep the dirt. At this point, it's a second skin. Later, the path narrows into a trench between two hills. The rainwater funnels here, turning the trail into a shallow river. You trudge through, cloak dragging, boots squishing. Every step is a new experiment in slipperiness. Marta starts singing something, soft, wordless, a tune that sounds like rocking chairs and old lullabies. Others join in. Even Brother Cabbage bleats in rhythm. You hum along, because there's nothing else to do. The road finally widens again, and there it is, the town. Real buildings. Smoke curling from chimneys. A bell ringing somewhere. You could cry, but you're afraid your tears would freeze. You limp into the edge of town like a band of cursed scarecrows. A man at the gate waves you in, pinching his nose. "Pilgrims?" he asks. You nod. "You stink." You nod again. He shrugs. "So does everyone else. Welcome." You shuffle to the inn, if you can call it that. A low building with a crooked sign and a dog sleeping under the porch. The innkeeper sees you, sighs, and begins ladling out something resembling stew. You eat without chewing. It's hot and vaguely vegetal. You don't care. You sit by the fire, clothes steaming, and peel off your boots. The smell clears a 3-foot radius. You scratch your rash. You drink something herbal. You drape your wet cloak near the flames. and for the first time in days you sleep under a roof. And yes, you dream of dry socks again. You wake in a real bed. It's lumpy, smells faintly of cabbage and old feet, and the straw mattress creaks every time you breathe, but it's off the ground. You blink at the wooden beams above your head, feel the warmth of your own body radiating out of a mostly dry cloak, and sigh with cautious joy. Then you remember, you slept right next to the goat. Brother Cabbage is already up and trotting around the room like he owns the place. He's gnawed one of your bootlaces completely off. You can't even be mad. He's somehow become your emotional support goat. The inn is bustling with noise. Pilgrims clomping downstairs, locals haggling over onions, someone loudly proclaiming they once touched the elbow of St. Peter's cousin. You gather your things, damp, stiff, but mostly intact, and head out, refreshed enough to start resenting your blisters again. The day is overcast, the air thick with the scent of last night's stew and this morning's livestock. You step carefully past the chicken and rejoin the group near the town well. Tibua is already there, trying to dry his socks on a stick like he's roasting marshmallows. Marta's wrapping her legs with fresh linen. You do a quick inventory: pack, cloak, spoon, relic, still unverified, Brother Cabbage. Check. Today's goal is modest. You've walked long enough that people have stopped asking why you're doing this. Now they just ask where you've already been. You feel legitimate. You look disgusting, but legitimate. The road out of town is rutted and narrow, passing through farmland dotted with scarecrows and damp laundry. After a while, the town noises fade behind you, replaced with the soft plap-plap of feet in mud and the occasional crunch of old turnip underfoot. The clouds hang low. Not threatening, just indifferent. You pass a wayside marker with a rusted bell hanging above a carved inscription: "Here slept St. Columba, allegedly." You ring the bell, just in case. It makes a hollow clang that echoes down the valley. Brother Cabbage trots up and sniffs the post. He doesn't seem impressed. By midday, the weather turns cold and damp again. The trail grows rougher. The trees thinner. Someone suggests camping early, but no one wants to admit they're that tired. So you keep walking. Eventually, you start looking for shelter anyway. You find it, an abandoned wagon overturned near a hollowed-out tree. It smells like must and rain, but it's better than open sky. You slip under one side, lay your blanket on the driest patch of ground, and try to pretend this qualifies as a campsite. You lie down and stare at the sky through a tangle of branches. The aches return. You shift. Adjust. Huff. The ground is cruel. Every rock has an opinion. The others settle in around the wagon, some inside, some under cloaks near the tree. Brother Cabbage curls beside Marta like a dog. You can't help but smile. He's become the weirdly comforting mascot of your misery. Dinner is quiet and bleak. You chew on a strip of something leathery. Meat? Bark? Who knows? And sip from your flask, which tastes faintly of sheep. The stars blink to life overhead, but most of the sky remains hidden behind clouds. And that's when it happens. A sound. A scuffling. A thud. You sit up, heart ticking faster. Someone's nearby. Not in your group. You hear the unmistakable clink of metal. A shadow moves. Then another. You reach instinctively for your dagger. The others are stirring now. Marta's eyes are wide. Tibua has his stick raised, which looks laughably inadequate. Then a voice calls out from the darkness, rough and too cheerful. "Evening, friends. Might we share your fire?" 3 figures step forward, soaked, muddy, and smiling a little too widely. One's got a lute. One's carrying a sack that rattles. The third just has that look. You know the one. You glance at Marta. She gives a tiny shake of her head. "We've no fire," she says calmly. "And no food to share." The lute player shrugs. "No harm in asking." They linger for a moment too long before turning away. One of them spits on the ground. The one with the rattling sack looks back and grins. "Watch your bags," he says. "You don't sleep much after that. It's the first time in days you've felt unsafe, not just inconvenienced, but truly on edge." You lie awake with one hand on your pack, eyes half open, listening for every snap twig or hoot in the dark. Pilgrimage is supposed to be peaceful, redemptive, holy. No one warned you about people like that. Historians still debate whether pilgrim attacks were rare exceptions or simply underreported. Some say the routes were mostly safe, others argue that robbery was part of the expected toll. You're beginning to suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. Enough danger to keep you alert. Not so much that people stayed home. When dawn comes, it's a relief. You rise groggy but alive. The others do the same. Everyone pretends nothing happened. No one mentions the dagger tucked under their blankets. You pack quickly. Brother Cabbage is the last to stand, shaking dew from his fur and headbutting a tree for reasons known only to goats. As you rejoin the trail, you find yourself walking closer to Marta and Tibois than usual. The jokes are fewer today, the laughter a little thinner. But you keep moving, one foot in front of the other, one blister at a time. Because despite the cold, the hunger, the rashes, and the shadows that sometimes follow a little too close, you're still going. And that's what matters. The morning starts quiet, too quiet, in fact. There's no rooster, no shouting traders, not even a distant dog to bark you awake. Just the soft shuffling of boots and the distant clatter of someone failing to secure their cooking pot. You stretch slowly beneath the tree, back sore, knees stiff, and a suspicious ache behind your left eye that could be early enlightenment or just dehydration. Today is souvenir day. Not intentionally, of course. You didn't wake up thinking, yes, I will now foolishly trade my last coin for a glorified stick. But the road winds into a small market town by mid-morning, and there, nestled between stalls of onions and questionable sausages, is a table full of relics. Your group pauses, hypnotized. Tibois makes a beeline toward a man loudly proclaiming he's selling a vial of Mary Magdalene's tears, collected from a cave in Provence, naturally. Marta rolls her eyes and walks away. You hover awkwardly, half interested, half aware that this is the medieval version of getting scammed by a souvenir shop in Rome. The relic seller wears a purple hood and a mustache so extravagant it might be structural. His table is a mess of bones, glass jars, splinters, ribbons, and what appears to be a toenail in a tiny silver cage. "You there," he says, pointing to you. "You have the look of one who needs divine protection. Saintly essence, perhaps?" You blink. "I already have something," you say quickly. He leans forward, voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "Not something like this." He lifts a wooden box with a flourish. Inside, nestled in a scrap of velvet, is a sliver of wood. "This," he says, "is from the True Cross." You raise an eyebrow. "Really? Again?" "Because this is the third piece of the True Cross you've seen in 5 days. And at this point, you suspect the original tree must have been the size of a mountain. Still, you're curious. The piece is shiny. It has a faint golden glow, probably just wax, but your road-weary brain is eager for wonder. You ask the price? "Only 1 coin," he says. "For you? A pious traveler? Practically a sin not to buy it." You hesitate. That coin was meant for food. Or a bed. Or maybe a bribe if your travel documents start looking suspicious again. But glowing wood. You buy it. Instant regret. As you walk away, Marta sidles up and asks, "So, what did you get?" You show her the box. She nods, unimpressed. "Looks like a matchstick dipped in honey." You sigh. "It glows." She shrugs. "So does swamp gas." Tibois, meanwhile, is wearing a necklace made from what he claims is a saint's elbow hair. It looks more like horse mane. He insists it tingles when he prays. You tuck the glowing splinter into your pouch and promise yourself you're done buying relics. But deep down, you know you're not. Historians still argue about the sheer volume of relics that circulated during the height of pilgrimage. Every town seemed to have a fragment of a saint, a piece of the cross, a drop of holy water collected from a hole in a wall. It was part devotion, part economy, part medieval tourism. And people wanted to believe. After all, the road is long. It helps to feel like something sacred is nestled next to your spare pair of socks. The market stretches on, full of distractions. A man selling scalloped shells carved with intricate scenes from saints' lives. A woman offering handwritten prayers, pre-blessed by a monk who once saw an angel. A child shilling painted stones shaped like fish. You trade a chunk of cheese for a tiny silver medallion. No one knows what saint it represents. It might be an acorn. You like it anyway. Further down, a priest in a dusty robe warns everyone to avoid false relics. If it glows, it's probably not divine, he says, eyeing your pouch. You tuck it deeper and smile innocently. By mid-afternoon, the road opens again and you leave the bustle behind. The fields stretch out, green and humming with bees. You chew on a bit of stale bread and think about what you've collected. 2 fake relics, 1 vaguely sacred spoon, 3 tokens from roadside shrines, a wax tablet sketch of a goat wearing a crown, Tibwa's contribution, and an actual blister the size of a pigeon's egg. You're not proud of your choices. But you're also not sorry. The path curves past the chapel built into the hillside. It's quiet inside, no one home. You step in, light a candle, and sit for a moment. Your legs ache. Your back is stiff. Your soul feels strangely heavy. You open your pouch, take out the splinter, and hold it up to the candlelight. It glows again. You still don't know why. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just sap and wax and the placebo effect. But for a brief second, you feel comforted. As if all your foolish purchases and sore feet have somehow led to this small, strange moment of peace. You replace the splinter in its velvet box, say a quick prayer, just in case, and step back into the afternoon sun. Later that evening, your group sets up camp near a patch of wild thyme. You eat what's left of your bread, chase it with lukewarm water, and lie down under the stars. Tibwa snores. Marta hums a song from her village. Brother Cabbage chews on your blanket. You close your eyes, the glow of your silly souvenirs still warming your pouch. And somewhere between discomfort and devotion, between skepticism and belief, you drift off, thinking maybe, just maybe, the real relics are the ridiculous stories you're gathering along the way. You wake up with thyme in your mouth and goat hair in your nose. Brother Cabbage has curled up beside your face again, exhaling the fragrant scent of something he probably shouldn't have eaten. You nudge him gently. He bleats like you've betrayed a lifelong friendship. Today, you walk with strangers. Not the usual crew. Marta's gone ahead with a faster group, and Tibwa is still trying to convince a tanner to trade him a piece of leather for his goat hair relic necklace. So you end up falling in with a ragged assortment of new pilgrims, all with fresh blisters and big opinions. The first is a snorer. Loud, unrepentant, and utterly indifferent to your personal space. You met him last night when he accidentally rolled onto your ankle during sleep and muttered an apology without waking. His name might be Jean, or January, or maybe you imagined him. He doesn't talk much, just eats constantly, and snores like it's a calling. The second is a monk. Or at least, that's what he claims. His robe is clean, his sandals suspiciously new, and he avoids answering any questions about which order he belongs to. He quotes scripture in the wrong places and once referred to St. Jerome as that guy with the beard. You're not convinced. The third member of this odd party is a goat. No, not Brother Cabbage. He's wandered off again. This goat is new. He's smaller, less charismatic, and clearly angry at being tethered to Jean, or Jan, who feeds it stale bread crusts. The goat bites him twice before breakfast. You respect that. The road ahead winds through open country, past fields of barley and the occasional crumbling tower. You walk in silence for a while, mostly because the snorer has started humming something that sounds like a dirge played backward. You try small talk with the monk. Where did you start your journey? He squints at the horizon. West. Helpful. You press on, focusing instead on the rhythm of your steps, the crunch of gravel, the flap of your cloak. You find peace in the motion, in the sheer absurdity of the company you keep. Around mid-morning, you pass a signpost etched with names. One of them is your destination, still several days away. The others are towns you've heard of but never seen. It strikes you suddenly how far you've come. How long you've been walking. How different you feel from that person who first adjusted their itchy cloak and stepped onto the road. A sudden bleat snaps you out of your thoughts. Brother Cabbage has returned, looking pleased with himself and covered in burrs. He's also brought something, a piece of parchment, chewed at the edges, but still legible. You take it carefully. It's a crude drawing of a saint surrounded by pilgrims, with a blessing scribbled beneath it. You're not sure where he got it. You don't ask. The monk tries to interpret it. Clearly, a divine message, he says. Or a menu. You nod solemnly. Probably both. As the day warms, conversation picks up. Jean/Jan tells a story about falling asleep on a shrine and waking up with a bee in his ear. The monk insists he once saw an angel near Avignon, though it might have been a very tall shepherd. You share the tale of buying the glowing relic, and everyone laughs, except the monk, who claims his robe is stitched with holy thread and glows. Only for the faithful. It does not glow. You pass another shrine, this one dedicated to Saint Felix. It's humble, a wooden cross, some dried flowers, and a small carved frog, which you're told is symbolic but no one remembers why. You leave a hazelnut, because that's all you have, and move on. By afternoon, you come to a small village. The air smells of baking bread and wet wool. Children run beside you, pointing at Brother Cabbage, who now has a flower crown made by someone in your group. You don't know who. You're just glad he's finally clean. You stop at the well, refill your flask, and rest your feet on a sun-warmed stone. Your toes thank you. Your knees file a formal complaint. There's a commotion in the square. A man with a crate full of blessed snail shells claims they protect against blisters. You nearly buy one, until the goat knocks over the crate and reveals a suspiciously modern-looking brand carved into the bottom of each shell. You buy a meat pie instead. Sitting in the shade, eating greasy crusts with your new, bizarre companions, you realize something odd. This might be the best day so far. Not because you're clean, or dry, or even comfortable, but because you've stopped caring about all the small humiliations. The snoring, the goats, the fake monks. It's all part of the story now. You lie on your back, watching clouds drift above the red-tiled roofs, and feel something like peace. Then Jean snores while awake. Somehow. And Brother Cabbage eats your leftover crust. Still, not bad. That evening you camp just outside the village, on a slope overlooking olive trees and a shimmering river. The sunset turns everything golden. You sit with your group, this strange, cobbled-together flock, and pass around a shared canteen of wine that tastes like vinegar and smoke. Someone starts a song. A real one for once. The monk hums along off-key. Jean falls asleep mid-note. Brother Cabbage bleats the wrong rhythm. You laugh until your sides hurt. As you curl up beneath your cloak, you press the goat-knob parchment into your pack and glance at the faces around you. You've walked with better-smelling people. Smarter ones. Possibly real monks. But not more entertaining. And on the road to wherever holiness lies, that's worth something too. You rise with a grunt and the unsettling sensation that your left leg has detached itself during the night and wandered off without you. Turns out it's just deeply asleep. You prod it, wait for the pins and needles to flood in like punishment, and then finally sit up. The camp is already stirring. Jean is snoring into a patch of wildflowers. The fake monk is brushing his teeth with what might be a twig or a relic. Brother Cabbage is chewing on someone's sock. Yours, probably. Today is the day. Not the end, but close. The cathedral is near now. Within walking distance. Real walking distance. You could get there before sunset if your legs hold up and your group doesn't get distracted by cheese stalls or questionable relics again. You start the day slow, stretching with a mix of optimism and medieval realism. Your knees pop. Your back creaks. Your feet feel like someone tried to reforge them in a very unsuccessful blacksmithing apprenticeship. And yet, you're smiling. There's something electric in the air, anticipation laced with disbelief. You're almost there. After all the mud, the rashes, the stolen socks, the blister the size of a walnut. You're really going to make it. The path becomes busier as you near the holy site. More pilgrims appear, some fresh-faced and eager, others hobbling with the 1,000-yard stare of veteran walkers. You nod at each other with a silent understanding. We made it. Somehow, we're still alive. Marta rejoins you near a fork in the road, smiling broadly. She looks terrible in the best way. Sun-darkened, lean, cloak patched with herbs and road grime. You hug. Neither of you acknowledges it. But it means everything. Thibaut appears soon after, still clutching that now crusty saint hair necklace. He claims it guided him around a wasp nest. You don't argue. Jean? Still snoring. The monk? Still maybe fake. Brother Cabbage? He's wearing 2 scallop-shell badges tied to his horns. Nobody's sure where he got them. As you move closer to the cathedral, the road becomes lined with stalls, some selling rosaries, others offering water and crusts of blessed bread. One man is selling vials of air. From the tomb of St. James. You briefly consider buying one, but the goat knocks the table over before you can ask the price. Good goat. Then the bells start. Far off at first, soft, rhythmic, echoing across the hills like the heartbeat of the holy. You stop. Everyone stops. There it is. The spire, sharp against the clouds. The cathedral. You stare, mouth slightly open, heart somewhere near your ears. It's taller than you imagined. More jagged. Not just a building, but an arrival. The destination you've been limping toward for weeks. The group walks slower now, each step reverent, awed, and maybe slightly theatrical. You don't care. You've earned a little drama. The gates are open. People line the edges, murmuring prayers, weeping, smiling like they've found the answer to a question they didn't know they were asking. You enter through the western arch, worn smooth by centuries of pilgrim hands. You run your fingers across it. The stone is warm. Or maybe your hand is just buzzing. Inside, it's cool and echoing and enormous. Candles flicker in alcoves. Incense coils through the air like fog. Every creak of your boot feels thunderous on the ancient stones. You walk past side chapels, past statues with noses worn down by generations of hopeful touches. You kneel, not because you're supposed to, but because your knees just give out. And you don't mind. For a long moment, no one speaks. You think about the beginning. The itchy cloak. The cracked leather boots. The cheese that tried to kill you in your sleep. The fake relics. The real fatigue. You think about the people. The ones you met, the ones who vanished, the ones you've somehow kept beside you through storm and stomach cramps. You think about the road, about how it didn't just carry you forward, but through something. You came here hoping for clarity. You leave with scars, stories, and a goat. Marta lights a candle. Thibaut sings under his breath. Jean finally stops snoring, if only because he's now snoring inside a church. Brother Cabbage somehow climbs onto a side altar. No one stops him. You smile. Not because everything is resolved. Not because you're suddenly saintly. But because, in this moment, under vaulted ceilings and stained glass skies, you feel something almost sacred. Peace, maybe? Or just relief. You step back into the courtyard as the bells ring again. Pilgrims kneel. Others lie flat on the cobblestones. You just sit. Back against the wall. Sun on your face. Tomorrow, you start the journey home. But tonight? Tonight you rest. You don't wake up the next morning. Not because anything dramatic has happened, no, you simply don't wake. Not early, not naturally, not gently to birdsong or goat snuffling. When your eyes finally open, the sun is already high, your limbs are heavy with the weight of completion, and Brother Cabbage is snoring where your foot should be. Your body has entered full rebellion. Now that the goal is met, it refuses to acknowledge stairs, slope, or sock. Every joint has seized. Your feet look like they'd been involved in some kind of obscure punishment ritual. And yet, you smile. You made it. You survived rain, rash, goats, relics, and rickety bridges. You survived bad cheese, bad singing, worse maps, and that one mushroom stew you're still convinced was a failed assassination attempt. Now, with the cathedral behind you, all you have to do is go home. You hadn't really thought about that part, had you? Turns out the way back isn't included in the miracle. Your group sits around a small fire just outside the city gates. Pilgrims are dispersing now, heading back to villages, cities, ports. Some will take boats. Some will join caravans. Some, like you, will have to walk. Again. You groaned softly. So does everyone else. Marta is writing something in her wax tablet. Thibaut is carefully wrapping his goat hair relic in cloth. For preservation. The maybe monk is arguing with a group of friars about theological minutiae, and losing badly. Jean is sleeping on his pack again. You check for goat horns nearby. Brother Cabbage has found a cabbage cart unattended. Of course he has. You sell your last trinket, your glowing splinter, for a single coin to a wide-eyed child who looks at it like it's treasure. You feel no guilt. You're almost certain it was wax-dipped driftwood anyway. It served its purpose. You trade the coin for a seat on a slow-moving cart heading halfway to your town. It's not comfortable, but it's off your feet. You lean back, letting the rickety wheels shake you into a half-nap, watching the dusty road you now know too well blur by in reverse. Someone asks where you're from. You tell them. Then you pause. Think. And say, "But I came from farther than that." You mean it. Because who you were when you set out, the overpacked, underprepared, slightly overconfident would-be pilgrim, is not who's returning. That version of you didn't know how to sleep in a ditch, eat in silence, walk with strangers, or pray while hiding from bees. The cart breaks a wheel 2 villages later. Naturally. You laugh, really laugh, for the first time in days. Then you offer to help fix it. By evening you're walking again. Lighter now. Not in baggage, exactly, but in something else. The ache is still there, but it's familiar. Yours. Earned. And with every step back toward the ordinary, you carry pieces of the strange, beautiful, uncomfortable road you left behind. You sleep that night under a lean-to beside a farm. The air is warm, the stars are blinking slowly above, and your blanket smells like goat. You smile. Not because it's over, but because now you know you can keep going. And not everyone can say that. So now here you are still. Settled. The walking is over, the cloak folded away. The relics, real or not, tucked into a box at the back of a shelf. And yet part of you is still out there. On the road. On a path that didn't always make sense but somehow carried you exactly where you needed to go. You didn't finish with answers. No divine voice. No thunder from the heavens. But you finished. You arrived. You looked up at a cathedral so tall it made your worries feel small. And you realized, for all the blisters and bad bread, you're still standing. You remember the people. Marta's dry humor. Thibaut's endless herbal experiments. Jean's mighty, unrelenting snores. And Brother Cabbage, the goat that should never have survived a week but somehow outpaced you all. The road back may be quieter. Familiar. Less dramatic. But it carries you home not as the person who left, but as the one who returned. Someone more seasoned. More ridiculous, probably. But stronger, too. So rest now. Let your thoughts slow down. Let the sounds of the road fade into nothing but wind and memory. And when you sleep, dream not of distance, but of the strange, beautiful stillness that follows a long, long journey. You earned it.